We have spoke a lot of times online, and I'm glad now finally we can have a conversation face to face.
But let's tell our audience that we know each other from face to face first. Then you decided to leave us. We were all in Johannesburg doing amazing revolutionary Pan-African work, and then you decided to do your own project. So it's more back into what we used to than a new way for us.
We always find our way to meet. So you have been writing a lot about West Africa, and you have been writing about the second wave of independence in West Africa. What sparked you to focus on this work?
Listen, it's quite interesting. So I was listening to, obviously I have commented, and you and I have commented together. The coup in Burkina, the coup in Niger, all those things, right? And I was commenting on them and looking at the fact that it was a West African situation, right? A lot of people argue that it's have to do with the desert. It's have to do with terrorism in the north of Sahel. It turns out that now Gabon is making a coup. And I don't know if you're well aware of your geography, but Gabon is not in the Sahel. Gabon is not a desert. Gabon is one of the highest GDP per capita in the continent, right? When Niger was one of the lowest. So what happened there? What happened there? That's something I ask myself, right? Because I start to realize, I think European media, Eurocentric media, they want to tell us it's have to do with Niger, Burkina, it's the Sahara, it's a problem of terrorism, Islamism, that's the problem of Africa. That's the narrative so far. But if it's happening in Gabon, what does it tell us? What does it mean? And I think what it means, and that's what I tried to write in this article, and I invite all of you to go and check it. It's in the Mail and Guardian. You will find it online, a second wave of independence for the French colonies. What I try to say in this article is say, wait a second, you guys miss one element. Those coups were always military leaders making a coup, okay? But back up by the youth. Back up by the youth. And why? As someone that have teach a great mind like yours back in the day, for instance, I know your generation is seeking for sovereignty. They want sovereignty. They don't want any foreign powers to go and mingle in their business anymore. Because that's one of the reasons Africa is where it is. That's what your generation keeps saying, right? And thanks to social media, thanks to YouTube videos like you, as you said earlier, education is available now. So the youth can see there's something wrong here. We cannot let France or China or Russia melt down in our affairs, and especially France in those Francophone countries, because there's a long tradition of doing it, right? Remember, you have time in France where it was we were a slavery empire. Then the slavery empire moved into a colonial empire. And then independence happened. That's the official narrative. But what starts at independence is the development of neocolonialism, as Kwame Nkrumah have said. And what we observe right now is the dismantling of that neocolonial project. And the fact that the family Bongo fought out of power in Gabon, when they arrived in 1967, and Omar Bongo, the father of the son, has been reinstated by the French at least 2 or 3 times. Where literally the French army would go and re-put him in power when the streets are like, no, we want a new president. No, we put him, okay? So the fact that has stopped, the fact that the French are not able to control who is getting power outside of the process of coup d'etat is telling us that a chapter of African history is finished. A chapter is finished, we're opening a new one. And that new one, now people will have the capacity to look at sovereignty. What we want is sovereignty. I believe that your generation is not calling us for better democracy, is not telling us, no, we want better elections. What we want is leadership that are able to maintain the coherence and the needs of the country, right? We do not want to keep developing China and Europe with our petrol, our minerals. We want something else.
And I think for people to be able to really understand that, we first have to understand what French influence in West African countries look like.
So listen, the influence comes from different directions. Is what we can call multi-layered, right? So you have first an education system. So in the 1990s, Francophone African countries are a good education system until the beginning of the 1990s. When the 1990s happened, what you have is the adjustment structural programs, right? I'm sure you spoke about that in all of your interviews. The IMF and the World Bank are coming and they say, no, we don't want that much teacher. You pay your teacher too much. We don't want that much people in Ministry of Interior Affairs, or we don't want that much people at the border. The state needs to stop spending money so it can invest into infrastructure. Because you pay the teacher salaries too high or too many salaries, then you don't have enough money to build the road that you will need for your infrastructure. And so the IMF and the World Bank have redesigned the budget of African states to limit the impact of education, right? And what's happened at that time is that you have a generation that received an education that was less good than the one before, right? And that education starting falling was also the fall of an education that were entirely French. If you look at before the 90s, most of the parents of Francophones that are now in the street burning French flag or bringing Russian flag in West Africa, their parents only look one TV channel that was French, or maybe 2 TV channels that was French. They used to follow French TV programs, right? Today, they have an entire satellite where they can have 250 channels. If you want to look at what people are doing in Russia or in China or in Brazil, you can find information. Back in the day, that generation of West African Francophone didn't. They have information about France only. So France captured the imagination. French captured their political imagination. The only solution was going to France. Right? And that era have finished. That's the era that is finished for me. Now your generation in Francophone Africa are looking at what China is doing, looking at what Russia is doing, looking at what France is doing. And they compare, and they can benchmark and say which one would be the most interesting for us. But at the core of it is a call for more sovereignty. What Africans youth are asking for is not the end of terrorism in Sahel. They would be happy about it. I'm not denying it, but what they ask for is presidents that have the best interest of the nations and that are able to say no to more powerful countries. When Brazil or United States are going to Niger, they have a GDP that is 100 times more. They have more power. De facto, they have more power. But yet, what people are calling for is a man that can say no. We will choose you over you, because if we make you two fight each other, we will win something. We want that strategy. I always tell people look at what Russia have done of its gas. Russia have a lot of gas, right? What have it done with its gas? They have decided new pipes, new tubes to transport it all around Europe, right? He had a project, a 12-year project made by Gazprom, the main producer of gas in Russia, to make what they call Nord Stream 1. I'm going to make it quick, but basically what they did is as soon as they finished to build Nord Stream 1 and 2, they attacked Ukraine. And if you ask Ukrainians 10 years ago, will Russia attack you? They used to say, only if Nord Stream 1 and go start to open. Right? What does it mean? It means that Russia thought, a long time ago, that it needs to control Europe. And its way to control Europe, so Europe don't control you, is to provide the energy to Europe and to be in control of that energy. Right? Africa is doing that right now, but they're not in control. They're not in control. Yeah. We're selling all the rare minerals. We're selling all what we need. Congo is selling 70% of what you need in a battery Tesla, but yet it do not have the strategic plans to make itself a country that tomorrow will replace Tesla. So you have to have that strategic capacity of thinking of your minerals, and one of the ways to do it is to mutualize it, to make sure it's not just the mineral of Tanzania, Rwanda, and Congo, but they say all the minerals of East Africa are negotiated together. Right? You need to gain power in that strategic approach.
So going back again to the exploitation part of it, it's like, how is France exactly exploiting West African countries, Francophone countries?
Listen, so they have an influence on the elite. All the elite of those Francophone countries have studied in France, right? A lot of them. So they have a cultural influence on those elites and an intellectual influence in those elites. A lot of them are in a crisis of imagination. Remember what Sankara said, dare to invent the future? That class, that governing class in Francophone Africa is not inventing the future. They have difficulty to invent a future that is outside of the France-Afrique relationship because they grew up in that culture. Some of them do, okay, don't get me wrong. But so the French managed to have an influence on them because they have their direct numbers. The ambassador of France can call whoever he wants in the government of Mali, or could, it's not possible anymore, of Mali or Guinea or Burkina back in the day, and make any deal that he wanted with them, right? This very same ambassador is in South Africa or is in Kenya. He cannot call a minister like this. He cannot call the president like this. He can't. But in Francophone Africa, it was one thing that France used to do, right? Because they were an important actors and they knew everyone. So I think the control is toward a class, a particular governing class that need to be changed. So we enter with people with more imagination, better paradigm of governance, new generation like you, right? And it's also economical in the sense that all of those countries are exporters. So they export to a lot of places, right? So Mali exports its gold to Qatar, not only to France. But at the end of the day, the network in place in those countries to extract the value always have to do with French. Like, for instance, the biggest company that extracts gold of Mali is Canadian. So we could say, no, why is people complaining about the French? It's a Canadian company. But now if you look at who is the CEO of that company and who is the chief executive director in Mali, it's a man that has been like working for France. It's a Frenchman that used to work for Areva. He used to be the head of Areva in Niger. Now he's the head of Areva gold in Mali. And those are the same type of people that have one project, extracting as much mineral of this continent as they can. And I can tell you one thing for posterity here. As soon as they take everything, they leave and you never hear of the French or the Chinese or the Russian anymore. They will leave. Africa is strategic until it has its mineral. As soon as they steal all the minerals, and it's going fast because technology allows it, as soon as they take all the minerals, they will go out. You will not hear about collaboration, democracy, and all of this anymore. No, it's economic. So to answer quickly your question, France's economic grip on West Africa is still present, and the problem is they have a lack of political imagination, so they don't even know how to transform and use their resources differently and better.
Now let's talk about the coups and the trail that this coup is following.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So where do we start? Do we start in the coup in Sudan? The Sudan have had a series of coups. Then Chad leader Idriss Déby left, and he was killed, which is really weird. Like I really know historian will tell us what really happened that day, but so far we don't know. He got killed, and then we got like Guinea, Mali, Burkina, and Niger that after fall, and more recently Gabon, right? So what you have is you have the Sahel, what we call the Sahel and the Sahara, that has a lot of people with weapons that are coming out of Gaddafi regime. So when the Europeans decided to kill Gaddafi, and especially Nicolas Sarkozy, all the weapons went to the Sahara, and a lot of groups have started to fight those states. Those states were weak because they are neocolonial states that do not deliver for the people. I think that's really the key element. If you have so much coup d'etat here, it's because it's possible, because the governing class have been failing its people, failing its youth, and failing the new generation.
So earlier on you spoke about the second wave of independence. So does this mean that we should be expecting another country to follow suit?
So a lot of people were commenting it, saying it's a Sahara problem. There's some jihadism in the Sahel. People have to fight it. That's the problem, right? Now with the coup in Gabon, we realize there's something different. And I'm arguing that it's a call for sovereignty. The youth are calling for sovereignty. They want that to be achieved. If I'm right here, and it's not simply another coup of neocolonialists, which is still possible, but at that scale, I don't think so. If I'm right, it means Congo-Brazzaville and Cameroon will be in trouble really soon. What it means here is that Denis Sassou Nguesso and Paul Biya might be retrenched by military really soon. I'm betting in the next year. Why? Because they have young people that call for sovereignty and that are tired of fake democracy. They are tired of fake election. They are tired of seeing fake leaders going to fake election, losing it or winning it, and ending up like having the same continuity. People are tired of seeing Paul Biya in power in Cameroon. People are tired of seeing Denis Sassou Nguesso in power in Congo-Brazzaville. The same way they were tired of seeing Bazoum in Niger and Ali Bongo and the whole Bongo family in general in Gabon. So if I'm correct in my argument, we will see a domino effect. And that domino effect will not stop until more or less all Francophone countries have transformed and changed. I'm also looking at Chad, because Chad is really in an interesting situation where there's a young leader, he's trying to make a transition, but he's trying to continue the power of his father. Will that be possible? Will that not be possible? We don't know. But he's weaker than the president of Cameroon, His Excellency Paul Biya, and the president of Congo-Brazzaville, Denis Sassou Nguesso.
Seems like we're playing the game of who's next. We'll be back to see who's next.
Yeah, bro.